So when I first started working from the university, my colleagues said, because I've come from business, we might as well do introductions while we're at it, since I've started. I'm obviously Marianne Collins. So I come from business, so I had worked for the Massachusetts Department of Corrections, and then I got hired with a company that sold food service equipment to prisons and hospitals like Mayo, and all, not mom and pop restaurants, but all the casinos and school systems, colleges, the hospitals, etc. And I was hired to do the prisons, ended up being the VP of Sales and Marketing, which is how I ended up in sales and marketing. He used to tease him about it, so he ended up being my customer too in the long run as well, But then I moved out to this part of the country, got a job at the university, because they wanted somebody with practical experience plus a master's degree. That was essentially what they were looking for. And when I started teaching, my colleagues said to me, my faculty colleagues said to me, well, now don't be intimidated by the students. And I'm thinking, I've been in 200 prisons probably around the country, actually even in England, and I said, I think I'm okay with the kids. So my own, not only Massachusetts, but then I sold to prisons. So when I said literally, I've probably been to a couple hundred prisons, from Leavenworth to I never got to Sing Sing in New York, but Rikers Island. I mean, you name an infamous prison, and I've actually probably been there. So as I said, I didn't find Garrett when he walked into the classroom intimidating.
Go ahead and try.
Good luck.
So I'll ask for introductions and background if I might.
Yeah. So my name's Amy Anderson, and I'm a part-timer at the Collider. I worked for IBM for many years and left IBM 5 years ago now. And I currently work for a small software company that's based in Montreal. And my responsibility is to manage the IBM relationship between my little company and IBM, manage that relationship right now just for the US, which is great, because in my previous company I managed it worldwide. And I'm happy to travel less, that's fine. So, but in this particular role that I'm in, I'm doing a lot more selling than I've done before. I've done a lot of global alliance, partnership work. Even when I was at IBM, my last 5 years there, it was all doing partner work. So this is a lot more sales oriented right now, and it's working with IBM, the IBM Global Services people. So these are, our running joke is these people don't get out of bed for any less than $3 million. Deals are not interesting to them if it's not $3 million. And so you're necessarily doing a consultative sale,
right? And
you're necessarily trying to get in at the C-level executives. So I mean, I've done it, but I feel like I could learn more.
Okay, great.
My name's Amanda Leitner. I've worked with entrepreneurs probably the past 5 years now as kind of an ecosystem builder. I own my own business that is a new site for telling entrepreneurship stories here in Rochester, the only one in Rochester. And I also build educational programming for medical entrepreneurs at Mayo Clinic. I have a very technical background, so sales is very scary to me. I'm not comfortable with it. I've gotten like a little bit better, but it's just not something that I'm very comfortable with. So just really learning better strategies and how to be more successful there.
Great.
Well, we're Ed and Kathy Jill Borgen, and we're serial entrepreneurs in the publishing and content industry. And we're starting a new iteration of that with a business called Health Arctic, which is biophilic wall murals for the healthcare industry and also now direct to consumer. And so in that, because our specialty is really content creation, sales are scary to us as well. It's not really our comfort spot. I don't feel we're necessarily great at sales. we like to kind of hang back, so we're hoping that we can learn and start to practice and grow that aspect, because this new iteration of content provision will require a lot of that selling.
And what kind of murals?
Biophilic. Biophilic is really very nature-based. A lot of healthcare and wellness establishments kind of rely on what's called evidence-based design, where certain properties of nature in their surroundings can kind of elicit healthcare outcomes.
Oh.
So these are wall murals and art kind of products that will help do that for.
Would that be like a living green wall, for instance, something like that? Or?
It can be, but for us it's more the photographic aspect of it, so that it's easy to implement. And we've done that before for hospitals and healthcare and wellness, but now we're also doing a direct-to-consumer component, so people can also incorporate that in their homes and their daily lives.
Do you know Chi Lam?
Who?
Chi, a guy, his first name is Chi.
No.
I'll send you some contact info.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Is that a person who?
Yeah, I don't know if he's still at Mayo or if he spun off his own thing, but he's doing a lot of stuff about improving health outcomes through environmentally friendly work environments.
Oh, great. Yeah. Okay.
I knew him at IBM and he's been at Mayo for a while.
Okay, thank you.
It's not very fair, but what she said.
Yeah.
So, sorry for passing
I figured that was going to be the case, but
No,
you
this
say it.
is a sales seminar. You gotta sell.
Yeah. And your name is?
Ed. Yes, my name is Ed.
Excellent. Hi, Ed. Good. I'm Jay Franson, and I do life and business coaching. And I've only been doing it for about 3 years, and sales is also scary for me. I like to coach, I don't like to sell it, and so that's kind of why I'm here. And I know that this information will be valuable for me to help my clients better, because most of my clients are business owners and managers.
Who also thinks sales is probably pretty
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
I know most of you, except for you two. I'm Garrett Leifering. I work with a small medical supplies company focused on geriatrics here in town. It's called Prevent Products, and been with them about 2.5 years, and had Ms. Collins here in college,
Marianne,
Marianne in college, and wow, and one of my favorite professors going back, not just saying that because she's here, but wow, we truly had a lot of fun. We learned a lot, we traveled, and really had a great experience in the program, so I couldn't turn down the opportunity to once again see her in action.
Appreciate it. So I actually never introduced what I actually do. So now I'm a professor of marketing. I'm actually the chair of the department now, and I'm director of the Strauss Center for Sales Excellence. So we have a sales minor at Winona State. So, and when we talk about traveling, we do a lot of role playing and that sort of thing. So one of our claim to fame is students like Garrett. We have a 100% placement rate for those sales students. Sometimes juggling 2 or 3. How many did you have? 12?
Oh, it was over 12
job offers.
Yeah.
Well, coming out of school, so it's been huge. So I'm really glad it's a small group because we can be really informal about this. So one of the things that I brought to the table today, because I wasn't sure what the audience was looking for, was some of the new research in regards to sales. Of course, now I'm a student of sales, not only teach it in regards to that. But the biggest thing that I wanted to emphasize is that the buying journey has changed. And obviously the internet is about that. So but today's buyers are completely different than they would have been in the past. And sending the same basic message to the same sort of seller, your same buyers across the board is not effective. When you talk about content management, that sort of thing, that's exactly, it's just going to be simply ineffective. So, years ago buyers were looking, the seller walked in the door with the information. That was what a seller did. And that was where we got our information. Now, that buyer is probably nearly 2/3 of their way through the buying process before they even reach out to you. And so that's what I'm sort of high level, just want to sort of walk through some of those changes that have been happening and some of the challenges we have. And I think the most important thing is to stop thinking about closing the sale and start thinking about developing a long-term relationship. Now, again, there's when you talked about consultative selling, there's a difference between transaction sales, like an order, when and we're done, we'll take an order and we're gone. But the adage is still true, is that you can make more money off of your existing customers than you can going to get a new one. So that's really, and that's what the buyers are looking for. And of course, buyers are much more sophisticated than they used to be because they've got all this information. So I have a little PowerPoint, but we'll just run through it in regards to just to give you some of the new information that's coming out, because things have changed. And when you talk about, I'm a little bit skittish about sales. I think what you really need to remember, it's a conversation. And when you feel like I'm not comfortable with sales, it may be an experience that you had with in a retail situation, or the traditional used car salesman. My recent experience with my husband are at this point in life, timeshare people. I mean, push. They're not making the effort to find what do we need? Do we want it? And if you can find their need, and you're passionate about the product or service you bring to the table, it's not selling, it's consulting. And if you start to put yourself in that sort of consultative frame of mind, think how much more comfortable you feel. That you said, I like to be a coach. Well, that's what sales is. Except I'm more informed about my niche, whatever it might be. And all I need to do is ask you the right type of questions. And then if I can find out that what you're looking for is what I can provide, then the close comes very simple. Simply, really comes quite simply. I think one of the things that people are afraid about sales is they actually hate to ask for the order. But if we determine that here's our value proposition, here's the passion that we bring to the table, here's the value that we bring to the table. My gosh, you have this need. There we go. I mean, and then there's a long-term relationship as well, and it's just so simple to keep on going. Hi, please join us.
Seems like the wrong collider.
Oh, no.
Another chair.
Yeah, let's pull this.
I can get a better chair than that.
Oh, let's say, do you have more
There's one over here.
Kind of
Well, I just
Oh,
might maybe you can push that.
Oh, there you go.
But I'm over here.
I'm
so.
sorry.
You can advance the slides. Oh,
Right.
you got a slide.
I got it.
It's okay.
Got a clicker.
Put me to work.
Hey, show up last and get all the hardware.
Spacebar.
Sorry to put you in the spot as you walk in the door, but we just went through introductions.
I'm sorry.
No, that's right. If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, I'm Catherine Bliss of Bliss Photography.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you selling to consumers? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So-
But
But
it's that I sell products, prints,
we're good. So I was just saying, and it's true.
my
that
services.
B2B or B2C, the terms we would use, business to business or business to consumer. What I was just sort of summarizing. It's still true is that our buyers have changed because they're so much more sophisticated. Actually, my husband and I were laughing. I said, and of course they're closing down all those. I live over on Alaska near La Crosse. They're closing down all those stores. 3 out of the 4 anchors are gone in the mall there. And I said, these days, everything that I'm buying is coming through my front door in a cardboard box. It's a digital disruption. Everything has changed, and so and I don't buy anything, even if I go to the store, other than my toothpaste that I haven't already researched online. So I'm a very sophisticated buyer, whether I was in business or as a consumer, and that's what you need to keep in mind. So, what additional value do you bring to the table? That's, I think, how you need to start thinking about it. So just to give you some background, I'll run through some of the things over here. And this is really recent, the state of selling, how much it's changed. Nearly 3/4 of sales leaders are saying their reps lack the ability to connect solutions to some of these business issues. And forgive me, this is primarily B2B oriented, but I think we can say it's really true across the board. Which means that, and we'll talk about this, what do winners do differently? They bring new ideas. They've challenged me. They understand my business model, whatever it might be. They understand my needs, and then they can bring those solutions. And so the challenge to sales is not walking in the door and sort of, there's a term, I still hate it, but it actually works. Show up and throw up is what they used to say. Hi, here's what I do, bang, 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 what do you think? And everyone's like, no. But actually, right away, it's no. It's not. It's as opposed to establishing relationships, some rapport building. It's business. It doesn't matter even if it's business to people, business to business. Guess what? People still buy from people. So we still need to relate some sort of relationship, some sort of there's 2 people sitting in this room together, or whatever the case may be. Let me ask you some questions. Let me tell you a little bit of what we do, just a little bit of what we do. And then let me ask you some questions. What is it you need? I'm going to use your example as you walked into photography. Is this formal? Is this informal? Is this for an occasion? There's all sorts of questions you ask to sort of set the frame in terms of this is what we can do for you. How quickly is your turnaround need? I have that photo. Believe it or not, it was only a year and a half ago. It looks he did Photoshop it a little bit, I'll tell you the truth.
I've just been working on a bunch of headshots. There's a lot of Photoshopping.
I did it overnight because I was doing I did a training in China actually, and they needed a photo, and I needed literally overnight. So it wasn't so much how good are you, how quick are you. I mean, he was very good, frankly, but But do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Once
the
you're
company that
established-
had 3 headshots they needed today, and I had to turn around
Right.
before I got here tonight. So.
Right. But if you weren't able to
Yeah.
meet that need, then you weren't
I
going to
wouldn't
make the
be here.
sales. So you take that and just extrapolate it across the board. It's just true of every service or product that you offer in regards to that. So if you're not able to bring those solutions, then there's not a chance that you're really going to go much further. Here's some other information in regards to where we're getting our leads in terms of from the pipeline. Pipeline management is of course what it's all about. You need activity. You need to sort of push it to the bottom line. So if we know where our leads are coming from. So from our sales, from our marketing people. Telemarketing is still in effect, but it's not so much outbound marketing anymore as it's let's talk about the web and call me or connect with me or do you want to chat, and obviously through your channel. So there's different ways that we can get our lead, but you still need to create that demand. And then this is the one I want to spend some time on. This sales cycle are incredibly increasing. Again, in nearly 2/3 of organization, the length of their sales cycle has increased. Part of it is because of the sales complexity. So my theme tonight, essentially about shortening the buyer journey, is I'm advocating that you become a buying Sherpa, and by the Sherpas that help guide people to the top of Mount Everest. That's what you need to do, because there's so much information out there. It's not that there's not enough information. There's too much information, and those who can actually guide their buyers through the process are going to be much more effective. And you start off with determining what their needs are. Obviously, that's going to be number one in regards to that. So, as I said, when I'm sitting here, it seems so. Attacking the sales complexity will increase the experience. And I've actually got some statistics here, and I'll refer to them. But think of that as like, how can I help the buyer through the process? It starts with, as I said, establishing a relationship. It starts with determining what their needs are. And then it helps them, let us actually help you work through this. Now, some of you may have simple transactional sales. Some of you, like your example of if it's not worth $3 million, it's not worth, thinking how large the buying group has gotten. And buying group, and we'll talk about, buying used to be, I don't like, something's wrong, I have a need, I've got to go fix it. It's just not linear like that anymore, because there's circling back, and the larger the deal, the more complex the deal, the more we circle back. And then you think you're halfway through it, and all of a sudden there's new people joining the buying group. Wait a minute, where did legal come from? Well, we forgot to check with HR, we forgot to do whatever the case may be. So that idea that something's amiss, I think I need to fix it, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to buy it, simply doesn't work that way anymore. So the simpler you can make it for them, the sort of the buying journey is what I was using in terms of. The other part of it is in terms of shortening, get rid of your cold calls, qualify and disqualify. I think we understand about leads. You've got to disqualify. You can't be spending time tracking down the ones that really aren't going to work out. And one way to make that work is to create a buyer persona, which we'll talk about in a little bit. There's probably 2 or 3, 4 personas. The type of, you have a typical customer, and you can actually flesh that out. This typical customer needs this, that, and the other thing. Of course, there's going to be others, but think of how if you can actually flesh out that persona, how much easier it's going to be. You know what? They're price conscious. These people are looking for something. They don't mind the paying the higher price, but they really have to be convinced that they need value. Somebody might be very analytical. I need to see figures, I need to see graphs, I need to see an ROI. Some people, we have to glad hand each other and get to know each other for a relationship before we even start talking. And of course, I'm only talking here locally. Imagine, if we're talking internationally. You said you traveled internationally. There's some. We used to do a lot of business in Italy. It's like we weren't going to talk business until we'd gone through a couple bottles of, champagne or prosecco, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, let's break for lunch at 1, not come back to 3. Let's go out to dinner. We're not come home to midnight. I mean, it was just an entirely. But we weren't going to do business if that wasn't part of what we did together. So that's what you need to think about. But most importantly, disqualify. I can't emphasize that enough. Think of how much time you're probably spending chasing somebody who's really not a good fit. I see you agreeing with that. Has that happened in regards to? And part of it is figuring out what they really want. So in your own mind, as I said, so we'll sort of walk through this process. This other thing that I wanted to bring up, and I meant to look up the date before I came, but I had read this somewhere that, again, it's not that buyers are just so much more empowered because there's so much information. As I said, you know, they're nearly 2/3 of the way through the buying process before you even come on the scene. So you need to keep that in mind before you even speak to a supplier. As I said, once upon a time, we were the source of information. I mean, I remember years ago traveling with reps, and they'd open up their trunks, and they had, you know, catalogs, and we'd bring all this information in, and we were the end all and be all about our particular product. It's just not happening anymore. But the statistic I was trying to look for, but I believe it's 1995, that all of the information, all of the knowledge ever created since mankind was up to 1995 equaled about 2 exabytes. And an exabyte, that's why I was looking for a little space here. An exabyte is 18 zeros. Mm-hmm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an exabyte. 18 zeros. All of knowledge, all of mankind's knowledge, I think through 1995 is 2.2 exabytes. Today, we create 2.5 exabytes daily. So it's not that there's not enough information. It's this, that there's so much information out there, and it slows down momentum. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so much information. So this is a statistic that I wanted to see. So there was some research by the Corporate Executive Board. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They do a lot of business research. They found that 15% of a buyer's time is spent de-conflicting information, because there's so many different, there's so much going out there. So, and almost 80% of them report that they're having, it's much more difficult. They have really high purchase difficulty. So that's where I go back to, if you can actually be the person who helps them through the process. And again, the more complex the sale, the more that this would be impactful in regards to how they went. So, you know, a lot of times your buyers are overwhelmed. You know, I mean, I've been trying to buy a suitcase. A suitcase. This is not a complicated product.
No, it is.
It is. It's like, wait, because I had I've actually traveled enough that I wear out suitcases. They break. And they're good quality, but they're going to be gone sooner or later. And I had a 22-inch Travel Pro, you know, that was a spinner. That's great. I want another 22-inch Travel Pro. You know, there's 20 inches, there's 25 inches, there's a 22-inch, but it's a rollerboard, it's not a spinner. And it was like, and then I went through and I kept on cursoring down through Amazon, and it was like, and there was another 10 pages. And that wasn't even, you know, and I still haven't found a 22-inch replacement spinner. You know, and it wasn't even the price. At this point, I said, I don't even care how much it costs. I just want to be able to replace this suitcase. And it was, and I abandoned the purchase. I mean, I still haven't, you know, bought a new one. And so I'll just, so now I take a smaller one or a bigger one, but I want that 22-inch. They're all 20-inch now, or they're 25. 25's too big, 20's too small. You know, I'm looking for Goldilocks, you know, just the right spot. Yeah. So that's our issue. That's your challenge. So this is what I was referring to. You know, linear. You know, I've got needs. I'm going to figure out what I need. I'm going to, you know, look at what we've got available, and I'm going to make a decision. That's not how it works. This is how it works. And this is what I want to leave you with. It's not about completion. It's about progression. Because we'll come in at one end, we'll start around, and then we'll loop back, and all of a sudden somebody else new comes into the buying center, and I've got a different priority. And now that we're halfway through it, you know what? We don't really need a 22-inch Travel Pro spinner. Maybe I need to get a hard-sided. So maybe I need to change my, you know, the more information, then I start reading all those consumer, you know, the reviews, and then I said, well, maybe I need to go this way, and maybe I should go that way. And you know what, and then I'm going to circle back again. I probably will come out some end because of the need. I need a suitcase.
Sooner or later, you got to buy one.
But sooner or later, I'm going to buy one, but it's been a complicated process. I'm a consumer trying to buy a suitcase. What about a business trying to buy a service or, as I said, a more technical product? So when we talk about this sort of, you know, the awareness stage, it was like, this is pretty much, you know, at some point, they're dissatisfied with something. But they don't know about you. That's what you need to remember. They don't know about you. At some point, they're going to say, okay, is the problem big enough to get off of status quo? Your biggest challenge is status quo. Your biggest competitor is status quo. It's not using, the other guy. It's your status quo. So that's at some point, they're thinking, okay, how am I going to solve that problem? They're not thinking about who is going to solve that problem. And that's where you as a seller can come into play. And you nurture them, essentially, through that. That's sort of the new norm. And that's what I meant by being a buying Sherpa. And the key is to provide relevant information at the right time. That's the most important thing. And so you can't do that if you haven't had a relationship somewhere along the line. So when those of you said I'm a little leery of selling, to me it's just like, well, let's just get to know each other. And let's figure out how different is that starting a relationship, a personal relationship. Let's get to know each other. There's some commonality here. It seems worth pursuing. Look, you have a need, and I've got, it's like somebody used to tell me, was it succotash, like, lima beans and what is it, corn? What's in succotash? Bam, here we go, we got something green. Reese's peanut butter, how about that? Peanut butter and chocolate, there we go. You had the peanut butter, I got the chocolate. I mean, essentially, essentially the same sort of thing. So you've got to guide your prospects through this journey is the whole point. So, figure out what you already know. Figure out what you don't know and what they need to know, and then the sort of all this who, what, where, and why, and then what journey does your customer travel on. So I think the first way to start feeling comfortable about sales, if you're fairly new at it or even revisiting where we've been, who are your customers and how are they buying? Start with the buyer. They're the bullseye. They're right in the middle of all this, and think of a couple of your most successful buyers, your customers. You know how they came to you. You know what worked. You know what buttons you pushed and how it worked. What compelling reasons they had to end up buying for you. Start actually in your own mind codifying that, and then that's when I said you could start to create some buyer personas in regards. So, by the way, they only buy for so much, right? There's only you provide the context. It's either profits, process, making it doing things right or doing the right thing. So increasing efficiency or effectiveness. Bottom line, if you're in a for-profit business, they need to increase their profitability. So you need to get inside their business. You need to be a partner of theirs. You need to understand their industry or whatever they bring to the table. How can when we've finished doing business together, you're going to be better off than you were before. That's where you want to get to in regards to the buying process. And when you start thinking about that, do you see how you're not selling? I'm advocating, I'm consulting, I'm sorting out. I happen to be an expert in this particular niche, whatever my little niche is. I know more about, this is my business. I know more about this, whatever this is, than you do. Let me see, if you've got a need, I happen to have, let me pull some more arrows out of my quiver. I've got everything you need here. But I don't know that until I've sorted out their needs. So as I said, selling's about a conversation. I mean, when we were in class, we used to do a lot of role play. It was like, at the very beginning, people were really skittish about it, and I kept on saying, it's just a conversation. But ask the right questions. So, have the right sort of, know you're going forward. So that's sort of the context. So you've got to be adaptable, obviously, So focus on their reasons. It's essentially sort of like fear, pain, gain, and fear. Think about that in terms of people buy things because something's going wrong, the pain. Or if we don't take care of this, something dreadful would happen, whatever the something might be. Or, if I can solve this problem, I'm going to come out as a star. So think of that fear, pain, and gain. To provide the context for your buyers, as I said. They're going to, by the way, they buy for their reasons, not yours. And again, get out of that selling mode. Think about, I'm here to help you. And honestly, I was a little bit skittish about sales too, I have to admit it. Except that it was like, wait a minute, I do know, if you have got this problem, I've got a lot. When we were talking about prisons, we used to sell trade delivery. A lot of prisons have a central kitchen, which they then satellite out to all these. They don't like putting all these inmates in one big dining room anymore because that's when all these problems can happen. So they feed them in all these satellite sites. So how do you get hot food to these, keep it hot, cold food to these locations? So I was very knew all about these delivery systems and had been to, I never really counted them, but I'm not exaggerating, so I said a couple of hundred prisons. So I knew that there's a corner somewhere, there's a stair somewhere, there's a narrow something somewhere, there's a dumbwaiter somewhere, there's an elevator somewhere. I knew all the areas that we had to make sure that we touched base and had the right sort of measurements and so on and so forth. I knew more about this little insignificant niche than probably anybody at one given time. But if you had a problem with the food delivery systems inside a prison, I'm the person to talk to. So when I walked in the door, I could walk them through this process, and they were just so relieved. It's like, I'm going to take this headache away from you. And how do you think how hard the close was at that point? You know, I mean,
Save
price,
my money.
yeah, price almost didn't come up, you know. And on top of that, we added, we were always very pricey too, by the way. We were always high end in the equipment that I sold. And it would be, and then I'm going to come when we make sure that we've got this all straight. And then, by the way, we warranty this stuff for forever, because it was stainless steel, all welded. You know, ostensibly we said, 60 days, 30 days, a year. We'd come back and fix it forever because our name was on it. You know, that was one of the things. How hard is that? I bet you'd want to buy it right now if you know. I mean, but do you see how easy it was to? And it was like, no. If they said no, we really don't. We don't really care about these inmates. We don't care if the food is hot. We don't care if the public health comes in here. We don't really care. Thank you very much. We're not going to be able to help you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what disqualified. You're not our customer. We're not gonna be able to do business. So that's what I advocate in regards. That's what I'm saying. Adapting, sell to them the way they want to sell. What are their compelling reasons? Whether it be that fear, pain, or gain, whatever the case may be, and then craft and create a solution that addresses their needs. And if you make it that unique, if you have a unique value proposition, there's really other than maybe they don't have the budget, or there's objections to be involved. We're going to delay. We don't have the budget. But bottom line, by the way, don't you, even if they say we can't buy it today, do you think they're going to remember you? Particularly if you're proactive and keep in front of them. So, as I said, what they're looking for sellers is in regards to sort of a unique some perspective on my market. Help me navigate the alternatives and avoid the potential mistakes. Don't forget your buyers are risk adverse. And so if you can come in and say, we've done this before, we're good, we know about this, we know about our product, we know how to manage this, we're going to hold your hand ostensibly, and we're going to make sure that you get through this. Tell me, that's when they're going to be successful. If you have a different, tell me something new, tell me something I don't know. Make me think about something I hadn't considered. Those are the sort of things that, I'm thinking again of a photographer. My daughter worked with a photographer. It's like, and she goes, well, I just need the digital prints. And she said, well, obviously you might want to put it in your wall. The way I develop them, they have some sort of protective film over that, some sort of protective covering. And so these will not yellow over age. And if you want to capture this moment, and you can pass it on to your children or your grandchildren, this is the way you want to go. I never even knew that. So now I'm going to pay that extra money to do that because you're the expert at what you do. So that's what you need to do. And by the way, if it's a large organization, you also want to be the champion. I'll come into your organization. I'm going to help you champion this through because again, I'm the resident expert at whatever it is we bring to the table. Now we're partnered. And how easy is it going to be to abandon a partner when we actually come to this selling situation? We're partnered. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you sell it in your organization. Because I've got the information, I've got the information on the ROIs, I've got your sales aids, I'll be there, I'll be right there holding your hand, ostensibly, you know what I mean? But that's what makes a difference. So, what winners do differently, and by the way, I please stop me if you have questions.
I did a question on the previous slide. So, navigating alternatives. Mm-hmm. The alternative of do nothing,
right,
is
one you can,
right. And that's always there. But my experience is kind of half the time they want you to talk about your competitors, and about half the time they're like, I'll do my own research on your, thanks, but I can go figure that one out. And I just wonder kind of what's your perspective on that.
So the alternatives are not just us versus them. With the best conversation is us versus doing nothing. Those are because you can do all the what ifs. Well, you told me that you had an issue with. You told me you had an issue with the equipment breaking down all the time, so it costs $200 every time that happens. How much does that delay your production at the other end? Well, actually, we're not getting anything out. So how much is that on the average? Well, it's about, actually it's about $1,000, $2,000 a month. So it's not a $200 problem, it's a $24,000 problem. That's the sort of conversation.
Yep.
In regards to your competitors, The old adage is true, you never sort of badmouth your competition. So, and by the way, you should know your competition just as well as you know your own product. So again, I'll use my own experiences. With the competition, we were more expensive too, and so it was like, it's a great company. They had, say, spot welded aluminum. I'll use my specific example. We had all welded stainless steel. It's like, it's a great company, but and I'm sure it would work for your needs. But however, do you want to buy it once? Because if you buy ours, you're never going to have to buy another one. Or do you want to replace it every year? So that's your decision. But really, let me tell you the advantages of this. So it's tough to talk about the competition, but there's something, if you can't define what differentiates you between your competition, you need to figure out, what is your value? And that's one of the things, what is your value proposition? This is what we bring to the table. So in my case, I actually had worked in the prison system, so not only are you buying the stainless steel equipment for 3 times as much as the competition, by the way, there's work too, but it really was going to break sooner. I'm going to help you navigate through everything that you need. I even know your buying process. I understand because of working with government entities. If anyone's worked with a government entity, it's a whole different ballgame. I'm going to help, and I was doing this before I even know that this is all recent research. It's like, yeah, that actually does make sense. I'm going to help you do this. I'll write the specifications for you. I'll help you navigate through this. We'll look at this, we'll look at that. It gets a lot harder to. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Something that I've been really working with a lot of, you have that internal advocate or that cheerleader that you've been working with from your pals.
Yeah.
And so anything that needs to be done, you want them to come to you. You don't want them to go report to their director or manager and misinterpret your product or say something that isn't accurate.
Right.
You want them to bring you into that conversation because you're most knowledgeable about that.
And then it goes back to relationships.
Right.
So that's what winners do. They bounce from one. By the way, you have to. It's not how to anymore. It's sort of when to. So there's different strategies again about who you are. You've got to have this collaborative process. Thank you for queuing that up. That was really nice. If you ask the right questions, that's where the insight comes from. They value what they say more than what you say. You've got to ask a lot of the right questions. Do they understand? Figuring out where they are in the buying process. And here's the key: do they understand the cost of inaction? That would be the what if. So this is a dated book, but I still recommend it. You can buy it online very easily. It's Spin Selling, S-P-I-N Selling, and it's by Neil Rackham, R-A-K-H-A-M, and it was published in the late 80s. But it's about asking questions. And the acronym for SPIN is situation questions. So who's the decision maker, etc. P is like, what are the problems? And again, you sort of peel back the onion in regard to that. I is what are the implications? The example I just used, it's not a $200 problem, it's a $24,000 problem. And N is what they call needs payoff, which is, this is the value I bring to the table. So that's one of the things I think you need to, as I said, it's a quick read as well, so I'd recommend it. When we talk about, sort of what's happening, and this is from called the RAIN group, but values in the middle of it. But bottom line, this is sort of like, in regards to what resources, what kind of characteristics you need to bring to the table. And it's about, if you notice on the behind value, there's the sales process, fill that pipeline, craft a solution. But on the next circle, relationship mastery, influence mastery, and conversation mastery. And that's what I'm going to advocate. You develop a relationship, you have an ability to ask the right questions, and then from those, then you can develop the influence. And so that's where the ask the questions, the spin, the situation problem questions. The influence comes from the implication. What if you didn't do anything? What if you could fix that? What would that mean? Well, that mean I'd have an extra day a week. What could you do with that extra day a week? I could conquer the world. So then, we could help you do that. This is the value that we bring to the table. So that's the sort of thing that, that I think would really help you. So I also want to talk about this buyer persona, and here's some examples. If you stop and think about it, I imagine if I asked each of you, you could probably say, this is one of our customers is, and this is just, decisive Daniel or innovative Irene. I actually work with our in-house, of course the university has a marketing department that the people who work there, not teach as I do in our department. And they had some real issues with their customer service. and they said, they asked me to do some customer service training. And so what I did, I acted as a customer. The first thing I did was I go to their website, and I find out that we have different ways to sign in. And I find out that the instructions to how to sign in was after you signed in. It was on the page after you signed in. So I had to do 3 different, it's either this one, so now we have initials and letters at winona.edu. We have M. Collins at winona.edu. We have initials and letters at minnesota.state.edu. I had no idea. I had to try all of them in order to, and then when I get in, it tells me how to. That was the first thing I said. Now, how do we already feel as a customer to your service?
Yeah.
I'm not real thrilled about this. They ended up creating profiles, and one of them was Need It Now Nellie. For the printer, because it's like, I need this right now. Actually they said once they realized, and so how do you respond to Need It Now Nellie? So I encourage you to think about creating some customer profiles or buyer persona. I bet you 3 or 4 would cover the majority of your customers if you start to think about it. Again, we did this, and sort of intuitively, we sold very high-end equipment there, actually to healthcare, to places like Mayo. But it was so expensive. It was $1 million feeding system, for instance, to bring food up to the patients. And so we thought, okay, well, it has to be a certain size hospital because it's not going to be a small community hospital. They're not going to spend that much money. We have to have a very strong food service director, somebody who absolutely values quality. And we have to have somebody who has that kind of money. There's, anyone think of somebody here. And we're not going to sell it to Winona Community Health. We're going to spend our time here in Rochester talking to somebody in Mayo. And so right away, let's disqualify. They're not going to buy $1 million system. If we're lucky, Mayo's big enough, they're going to buy $10 million worth of this system. So that we've already started to narrow what we're doing. But if you can start thinking about sort of your buyer profiles, I think that would really, really help you as well. So shortening the cycle. This is what I was talking about, the value proposition. How do I provide value? Why do people buy from you? And so you start looking at what you currently do and think of your successful sales. What value do you bring to the table? And by the way, make sure it resonates with your buyers. It's like, well, look, I'm the, I've got, I guess I'll use my example. I know all about inmate tray delivery system. Well, what does Mayo Clinic care about that? In fact, that would probably turn them off, wouldn't it? Because it's like, we're not going to use the same sort of system that you're feeding inmates. So make sure we're talking. By the way, I can refine the same message, but I'm not going to mix. That's why I said when I started, can't use the same message for everybody. It just doesn't work anymore. And then obviously, why me? What differentiates you? And then in some regard, you have to substantiate it. Whether you bring whatever your service might bring. There's Garrett, do you remember Feel Felt Found?
Yep.
A lot of pushback with, we call it Feel Felt Found. A lot of your customers will say, like, no, I don't know, I'm not comfortable with this. And there's a great way to address that. And it's like, I know how you feel. Others have felt that way. But once they used our product service, they found, and then you have the substantiation, whatever it is. And think about that. Empathetic, I know how you feel. Others have felt that way. Mitigate risk. And now I'm going to substantiate. This is what they found. It's a real simple thing, but if you think about that, feel, felt, found, it actually works. So to give you some examples of value proposition, Uber, best thing in the world in regards to talk about digital disruption. What do we not like about cabs? We didn't like waving them down. We didn't like, I don't always have cash to pay you. I've got an app, I just click it, this is where I need to go, I know when you're going to show up, and then there's no cash involved. That talk about a value proposition. It's a cab ride, isn't it? It's no more than that. How do they make it so unique and so iPhone? How about that in regards to talk about? I left home last week without my phone. Now I've lived nearly 5 decades without, or 4 at least, without a phone. I go back to when my mother in high school. My mother would say, "Take a dime if anything comes up, call me," from the phone booth. And I almost turned around and I stopped and I go, I can live without my phone for a day. It was like, no, I can't. I actually was trying to do some calculations and I went to grab my phone and it was like, I don't have my phone. I don't have a calculator anymore. I don't have a camera anymore. I don't have. Talk about a value proposition. And then actually, how about if you've seen this one, shave for a few bucks, you know, I mean, come on, shavers, you know, Gillette, really? We're going to spend that much money for shaving? You know, and so here's something very inexpensive, same quality, that's their value proposition. So make sure you can define whatever that might be. So this is just some, you know, and so wrap up with it. There's a sort of 10 tips here. So define your value proposition. Talk to the right person. Anyone made that decision? Make a mistake?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know one of my first sales was like, oh, I'm golden. You know, I got this one. And I was like, so what's the next step? Well, I'm going to have to talk to my boss. I thought you were the decision maker. I just hadn't differentiated that. Do they have can they make the decision? Do they have the money? I'll point to the third point. Shortest distance to a faster sale is through the ultimate decision maker. Now that should be, you know, common sense, but it isn't for all of us, you know. And actually, the other one is go into a prospective customer at the highest level possible. You know, that's I actually used to work in the greenhouse industry, and I remember I ended up talking to presumably it was a husband and wife, the greenhouse owner. Talked to him for about an hour, and I thought everything was fine. And I remember his wife walked in the door, and I just knew immediately. As soon as she walked in, I said, "Oh, I haven't been talking to the decision maker.
Yeah.
The buyer. She's the buyer." That's exactly right. And I remember going, "Oh, we're in trouble now," because it actually was there had been some issues. We were negotiating. You know, there had been some problems with the equipment, so we were negotiating how much he was going to be willing to take in terms of because we were self-insured. And as soon as she walked in the door, we're done. And we were. She was the decision maker, you know.
I have a really difficult time with that because majority, 80-90% of women are the ones who are booking me and dealing with all the communication with me. And I always say, okay, when it comes to your ordering appointment, you really need to have all decision makers there. And I don't want to put her in a place where she feels like she isn't the decision maker, you know, because a lot of times she is. But there's enough times that she's not, or she defaults in that, like, well, my husband's not here, so therefore I can't make the decision on it. And I'm like, so but you said you were the decision maker, so now where does that leave me?
So there's ways to ask that, essentially. And insurance would be another good example that, you know, like, no, I make all the financial decisions. It's like, no, I think you better bring in your significant other to talk about this. I would, you can't just say, like, okay, who makes the decision? Okay, not you, well then, I'm disqualifying you because I said get rid of your whole leads, right? The best way probably is in regards to, so is there anyone else who needs to be involved, you know, before we proceed, you know, because let's go ahead and get this deal finalized, but is there anyone else that you want to get involved? And then, you know, I think you'll flesh out most of them, not all of them. They're still going to say, oh, I can make all the decisions. And then it was like, oh, honey, I forgot my credit card. Can you do this for me? You know, maybe.
Yeah, well, and I've got on one deal particularly, a VP who has enough vanity that he can't admit he's not the only decision maker. We're sure he's not.
Right.
But he won't, you know, he's like, no. And we're like, actually, you don't own the budget. I already know that.
Right.
But, you know, and honestly, I think it's a function of vanity.
So have you brought in the ultimate decision maker? Or is they're blocking your access?
Yeah, we're getting a little bit. And again, I'm working this with IBM, so IBM's trying to get to this guy, the ultimate decision maker, but it just gets more convoluted.
Right. That's that whole buying journey. And then I hate to say this, at the very end, it may just circle all the way back and end up being somebody else altogether.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So the best you can do is to try to avoid those obstacles. And in regards to, you know, I would ask for the order, you know, and that's pretty much, you know, when you've got to that point, so we're ready to go ahead. Do we need to sign the contract? What are the next steps? Who else should be involved? Is this a family in your case, is it a family decision or is this your decision alone? Because we can go ahead and finalize it, but I'm going to need money. I mean, then now you got to nail down.
And you know, it's very hard because a lot of times they do have to make all the decisions. Okay, say a stereotypical. This isn't always the case with my clientele, but stereotypical. You know, there is maybe a mom who does a lot of the, you know, all the interactions, but then the husband is typically a physician, and his hours are 80 hours a week, and so trying to get him to the table
Right.
when they've got 3 other kids,
Right.
no sitters. You know, I mean, there's just so
Right.
many. There's so many blocks that I keep trying to remove, and yet it just feels like there's another block to be.
Right.
Like, I'll meet you at 8:00 at night. You know, can meet at your house.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's always that. But anyway, yeah, people
But
like to
again,
throw up their.
what we've been talking about is make it simple, you know. So maybe you can automate that somehow. Look I'll send you the all the information. Once you say okay, at midnight, just send me a click. You know, say I agree here, and we're off to go.
Online scheduler.
Online
Yeah.
scheduler. Or
Yeah.
online approval of the contract.
A lot of times in my business, as soon as it goes online, the sale is gone.
Oh.
So it needs to be a little bit more.
Oh, because if there's any delay, they're
well, if they have the pictures and they see them.
no, I
they-
meant to get the money.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know, so they don't pay you until they get the.
So it's a complicated process that I have, but they pay upfront for the digital files, and then I sell on top of that.
No,
So
exactly.
if I've already given them the digital files,
No, I
there's
meant
no
a digital
incentive to-
contract that you get. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But again, simplify
That's
it
just
as much as possible.
Right, and I've been working on that,
Right,
so to
right.
try to make those
Right,
barriers, but
right.
there's
So-
a lot of barriers for
Yeah,
people.
they really are. Yeah. As simple as even the simplest things. So, this is the most important. I think one of the most important. Uncover their aspirations and their afflictions. I don't want them to focus just on their problems or afflictions. Think about their dreams as well. You know, connect the dots. You know, so that here's the buyer's needs. Here's what we can bring. Ask all the right kind of questions about their pain points, which is afflictions. But here's to uncover their aspirations, their dreams. So imagine crafting a schedule, a solution that not only we're going to mitigate your risk, we're going to take this away. You've always wanted to get this done. We're going to be able to make that happen as well. You know, so. I'm using yours because it's a simple, it's like food. When I used to work in food, everybody eats, right? Everybody knows about photos. You know, if there's aspirations, like you wanted that big photo over in the living room in that big wall, you know what I mean? So that's something you've always wanted. That's why you went ahead and did this. Let's go ahead and get this done. I mean, that's sort of the dreams that you might tap into.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then obviously this goes without saying, you know, engender trust and confidence. Examples, case stories that feel, felt, found. And also make sure that you've got to mitigate their risk. You've got to reduce their perceived risk. And part of that is just as simple as warranties, guaranteed. You know, I mean, like every time I stay in a hotel room, if you're not completely satisfied, we'll refund your money in the morning. Has anyone actually ever tried that? I really wonder if they really mean it. But honestly, a hotel room, I used to travel a lot too, right? It's a bed and a shower. As long as it's clean, I'm good to go. And honestly, I'm on the way in the morning. I mean, it's an interesting way to mitigate risk because how many people actually follow up in it? Because now I'm trying to catch a plane or I've got a meeting. I'm not going to say, you know, I didn't think my glass was clean in the bathroom. We're gone. But it did mitigate your risk. You feel better about it. Deal with the objections. They're coming. You know, so you already know what your objections are. You already know what they're going to be. But by the way, the earlier they come, the better you have an opportunity to forestall them or anticipate them. And by the way, there's only so many objections. One is source, which I just don't like you or your company. One is the product. I don't like the product, the service. One is, you know, timing. I don't, you know, we can't do it now. We'll do it in the fall. The other was we just don't need this. And the other, finally, it's price. And by the way, you're always going to come up against price. I mean, you know, so be prepared to address it. If you've established your value well enough, the price really should not be the issue. You should have, but you know that if they're going to push back and that, be prepared. This is what they're going to say. This is how we're going to handle it. And I think if you've got objections, by the way, objections to me are concern plus a question. They're not bad things. They're already considering. They're starting to think, you know, well, how would I use that? Well, I'm a little concerned about how we'd pay for that. Okay, then they're already starting thinking how I'm going to put it into my operation. So you cycle back, and as I said, maybe rethink of how you established your value to begin with. And then obviously, as I said, you know, every touch point you have with your customer, you know, plan for it. What's my goal? This helps you shorten it. What are my strengths going in? You already know your vulnerabilities. Be prepared. What's the next step? Never walk away from your customer without a guaranteed, nailed it down next step. It's the adage is still true. It takes 3 to 5 in business, B2B, 3 to 5 visits to actually have any kind of, and it's actually getting much more now. It's in your kind of complex, it's probably 7 to 10 to 13 months. And the cycle's very long. But don't ever walk in unprepared, and don't ever walk out without a commitment. That's really one of the. And then persistence, persistence, persistence. You know, avoid continuances. Get the information. You know, as I said, make sure that they see the value that you bring to the table, and then make it easy to buy. This is sort of the thought I'll leave you with. Be that buying Sherpa. Guide them through the process. Anything you can automate, automate. Anything that you can make it as simple. When we buy online, why do they have you populate it all with your shipping address and your credit card information? It still scares me. I said the other day, and you know, I was looking for something, and I said, "Oh, I actually need that," and just clicked with my thumb. It's like, it'll be there tomorrow. And I thought, I should have thought about that before. I mean, that's all it took on my phone. My phone, I clicked on it, and it was there tomorrow. You know, and so I didn't have a chance to abandon the purchase. If I was online, I have to enter in my information, I have to get my credit card, and you know, I'm thinking the whole time, I don't really need that, you know, as opposed to click, it'll be there, and it's there so quickly, I don't even have a chance to say, oh, all right, that's here, I'll
do it
buy it.
tomorrow.
Exactly. So that's sort of essentially what I wanted to sort of leave you with in regards to. And I think, Julie, you can share the PowerPoint if anyone's interested in it. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That would be
And
great.
so if you registered through Eventbrite, then we'll have your email address. If not, I can pass this around and please add your address. We wrote in a few people, so if you're interested in that.
So does that help
sure
in
can.
regards to mitigating your risk concerns about sales? It's keep in mind it's a conversation, and remember. What I enjoyed was I was a consultant. And actually, my first job out of college, I worked for a consulting firm. And even back then, they used to have a consultants are people you pay to bring in, and we used to call it management by wandering around. We'd go into the factory and say, so what do you think the problem is? And they'd tell us. And we read up the report, and they'd go, "Oh my gosh, this is a great solution." The solutions were there in their own in-house, but they needed an outside consultant. So, but in some regards, I felt like a consultant. It's like, have you had an issue with that? And of course, the more you know your industry or your customers, I bet you've had an issue with that before, huh? Yeah, we really have. Well, what would happen if we could do this? Those are sort of almost trial closes, and actually everyone's nodding their head. You actually want them, so if we could do this for you, if you can, maybe not so overtly, but if the customer can say, yes, I could see what would happen, we're on our way to the sale. So that's what I think you need to think about. So, any other discussion? Have questions?
This was really good.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, really helpful.
But it's, as I said, I think it's a matter of reframing it. It's not so much selling, it's helping.
Well, that's what I was thinking about as I was listening. It's really about a shift in mindset.
Right.
Whereas like 10 to 12 years ago, everything was about thought
Push,
leadership.
push, right.
And push, and be this omnipresent thought leader in your industry.
Right.
Where it's a shift in mindset where it's about, you're still that thought leader, but on a bite-by-bite basis with your customer.
A good way to put it, exactly.
Yeah.
And the seller that brings insight into the buyer's mind is the one who wins. If you can get your buyer to say, I hadn't thought about that, I hadn't considered that, you're absolutely right. How hard is it to get to the close from that point?
One of my best customers doesn't really ask price for starters.
Right.
Like values what it is that I'm offering.
Right.
And in the end of the last time wrote a very significant check, and while they're writing, they're like, "We're just so grateful we found you. We're just so thankful." And I'm like, "I've done nothing here. Like I didn't even have to sell. I just offered what they wanted."
You provided value. So that's why I said.
They're thanking me, hugging me. I'm like, "Thank you for this mortgage check. I appreciate it."
Can you capture that in a bottle? Essentially?
Exactly.
What was their definition of value that you provided to them? And so that's why, honestly, I think we'd all be challenged to say, what is the value? What differentiates me? Why do we buy Coke versus Pepsi? Why do I'm going to go with brand X as opposed to brand Y? Why am I going to buy your devices as opposed to somebody else's? What value do you bring to the table? And in my own sales experience, we were always high end, so we could never compete on price. And by the way, competing on price is it's a race to the bottom. everything it's just commoditized, you know, in regards to. So what do we bring to the value? Well, you know, we brought my expertise. You know, we brought the fact that I'm going to mitigate your risk. We've got the fact that, as I said, you know, I mean, I don't mean it truly yet, but I'm going to hold your hand. I'm here to tell you, you know, also people don't want to be the first one to do it. You know, feel, felt, found. I know how you feel. Other people have felt that way. Then they found this way. You're not the only one who's going to, you know, spend $1 million for that help. You know, actually, we would use Mayo as an example. Mayo Clinic uses it. You know, well, if they use it, it can't be. Do you see how you mitigate the risk? You help them. And then, well, I've never really purchased this before. Let me show you, because we've been through this hundreds of times. I'm going to help you and guide you through this purchase process. Mm-hmm. You know, with the bidding situation, we'll provide the specifications for you. You know, if it's, you know, I don't know how to champion it through my own organization, we can help you with that. What do you need from us? Do you need testimonials? Do you need data? Do you need this? Do you see how I'm becoming a valued partner? I'm collaborating as opposed to, I'm not selling, I'm working with you. I'm helping your bottom line. Mm-hmm. And that's where the success comes from. And if I can't help your bottom line, disqualify. You know, you're not my customer.
So one thing we're dealing with at several accounts is we'll do, you know, references. I mean, we have case studies online and stuff, but a lot of times I want to call up somebody and have that one-on-one reference conversation. And they want to do it very early in the sales cycle, and we're happy to do that, but not until they're almost ready to close, because we don't want to waste the time of our valuable clients. And so kind of managing that is,
So we just had a speaker in the Advanced Professional Selling class, Bob Biesterfeld, who's just been appointed the CEO of C.H. Robinson. So it's the first Winona State grad that is now a CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Oh, very
and
nice.
he mentioned McKinsey Corporation, which everyone's familiar. Yeah. And he said McKinsey, they spent 2 years with C.H. Robinson, 2 years before C.H. Robinson wrote a check. They spend all of their time and money up front with the relationship. So he said they average $1 million per lead. $1 million. Of course, they're also check cars. That's the once you become a client, you're writing a check for $1 million a month for them. But they spend $1 million. So I wonder whether you really want to rethink that in terms of the challenge is not to give away your consulting for free.
Yeah.
But enough to tease the interest. I think at the end it might be you're almost on the sale. I'm not saying you give away it all, but you need to tease it at the beginning.
No, it's
this is what we offer, but you're gonna have to come over here before you get that.
It's a real challenge.
Yes.
Do you do testimonial videos from your other clients?
Oh,
or
sure.
anything like that? And that's just not
but
good
they're
enough.
like, no, I want to
talk to them.
But again, you're high end.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking a lot of money. Yeah, I want to talk to somebody.
Right.
Yeah,
And
I would actually really want. I would push it closer to the beginning. Once you've qualified a lead.
Yeah.
Now, you don't want to do it for everybody. You
Right.
know, I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Interesting. Yeah.
I'd like to buy $3 million worth of your product. You're not going to talk to me. You don't have $3 million. I don't even know what your product is. But if it's a qualified lead, a really qualified lead, so I put the effort into qualifying the lead, making sure we're talking to the right decision.
We've got a proposal on the table.
Oh well then.
Yeah. But one of my bosses is saying no, not until they're almost ready to close, and I'm like.
And what's your success rate with that?
With holding it off till the last minute, across the company, I couldn't say.
But I would be interested.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many have we lost?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
And how many times do we just capitulate at the end and do it?
Right. Anyway.
When my boss is saying that's not how we do things.
And how does your customer feel that we had to push for this? How do you feel? How have you? What basis have you set the relationship going forward?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many opportunity
that's
costs
a good
there.
point. Yeah.
You know, in my mind, does everyone agree with my thinking?
In particular, at B2C, when I think of your company, we didn't talk about the referral word.
Right.
And when you love the people that just simply write the checks and love everything that you do, was there anybody else that could really use something like this? And then they're doing the feel, felt, found for you.
Right.
I was lost out of my mind. I met this woman. Her company's great. Best experience ever.
Right.
And the pictures turned out lovely.
Right.
Done. And those referrals are going to.
Yeah.
That's what you want.
Right.
That's
And
what
then
you
think of how
want,
much
so.
shorter the
Right,
cycle is.
that's when the
what we've done
husband
for
hears
you.
it at the
Right.
dinner table
Yeah.
with the family,
Yeah.
and then he's like, yeah, get her going, and then
Yeah, that's exactly
then
right.
it's
But
done.
think of how short the buying cycle is then. You've already,
Yeah.
you're starting
Well,
here.
it's interesting because I've been
Yeah.
tracking all of my Google, like, you know, who's searching for me. Basically,
Right.
they're searching for Bliss Photography. They're not searching for a photographer in Rochester.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, there's that
Right.
brand that's carrying a
Right.
good weight, but yet, you know.
So I really advocate that you go back and think about who are your successful customers. Start there. And think about what the journey they got to you. And you'll be surprised what little nuggets you're going to pull from there. And excellent point, Garrett, in terms of then referrals. You know, they're but what worked there, because it'll work another time. And as I said, qualify and disqualify. You know.